The officers then found Claire Orrey dead in the bedroom. She'd got multiple head injuries. And then obviously they found Stephen, who had also got multiple head injuries.
And he got then rushed to hospital.
He got taken to hospital, and luckily he did survive. Just a quick disclaimer, the content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, crime scenes and other disturbing material. Listener discretion is advised. This episode is sponsored by Think Forensic.
Think Forensic are a one-stop shop for all things forensic science and crime solving. They hold experience days, as well as corporate events, team building events, and general education for primary school right the way up to university level, as well as other events and consultancy. There's also a shop where you can get your hands on all things crime solving, from evidence gathering to packaging and collecting evidence, as well as other forensic science equipment.
For more information or to book on an experience day, please visit the website.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Grave Secrets. We're your hosts. I'm Beth.
And I'm Annie, and in today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about quite a few different things that sort of cross over, aren't we? So this is a tragic case in Telford, and it's sort of like the complex intersections of mental health, justice and family, and sort of how they all come together.
And through an investigation as well. We are going to give you a warning on this one. We have covered quite a few cases now that involve mental health to some degree, but this was a real key element of this case.
Yeah.
So I do just want to make people aware that we are going to be talking about mental health in quite a lot of detail, and it's going to be a theme throughout this episode.
So I think we should just get straight into this one.
Yep.
And it starts off on the 30th of July, 2023. So this is a quite recent case.
Yeah.
And it was a 999 call to the police from a gentleman, and it was from the Orrey family home in Telford. And the call was from a man saying that he thinks his son has killed his wife and is trying to kill him. So even this sort of opening, and I listened to the 999 call, and it's quite chilling, isn't it, to think that you're ringing about your child?
Yeah, so Telford's in quite a nice area. It's down south of the UK.
Is it just past the Midlands?
I think so,
or around
it's
the Midlands,
further,
I think. Yeah. I'm not sure.
It's further down, isn't it?
Further than the Midlands, or just further down
from us. But I think in quite a nice area. There are images of where the call is coming in from.
Yeah, from the family home, and it looked like just a nice, normal
quite
family home, didn't it?
Yeah, quite a big property. But yeah, I found the call really difficult because more than anything, and I think you kind of get a better grasp as to why this might be later down the line, but the caller seems quite calm in the way that they are talking to the dispatcher.
Yeah.
The dispatcher is a bit taken off guard, I think, because, again, very calm as he says so, but his actual words were, "I think my son has killed my wife and he's hit me over the head with a hammer." So that's quite a lot, even for the dispatcher. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. They're probably expecting more kind of maybe drunken calls. It's a Sunday morning.
Yeah. I don't know, I just felt really, really sorry for the guy making the 999 call because he's been hit over the head.
Yeah.
He thinks his wife has died, and he even said, if you don't get here soon, I've lost a lot of blood and I'm going to die.
Yeah, he was like, I can feel myself, I'm going to pass out.
Which I think that was a reason why he was probably so calm, because he was sort of, if you're ready to pass out, you're a bit faint, aren't you?
Yeah.
So he was probably at that stage where he couldn't panic.
Another thing I thought was really difficult as well is because the dispatcher, and they have to do this obviously, but the dispatcher does say, how do you, can you confirm that your wife has died? But later we'll go on to find out that he couldn't get to his wife.
Yeah.
But that in itself would be really difficult.
Yeah, that is really sad. So in this case, obviously armed police were sent to the Orrey house straight away.
Yeah.
And they had to gain entry, sort of force entry, didn't they, through the front door. So they had the front door off, they went into the house.
I couldn't actually work out how long after the call that took place. Did you?
Yeah, so it was something like the call had come in at 5:02.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long after.
Ah, right,
So it
okay.
was as soon as, I think she dispatched armed officers straight away.
Right.
So they gained entry, and the armed officers don't really know what they are coming into.
No.
And with something like this as well, they're probably not going to be thinking about preserving any evidence.
No.
So when you've got someone that's alive in there, your main focus is preservation of
Because
life.
they did actually barricade the door, didn't they,
Yeah.
in this case? Yeah.
So it's preservation of life. So if there is someone that we know, like there was here, the caller,
Yeah.
who is injured, they need medical attention. That
Yeah.
does take priority. So the guy who made the 999 call was called Stephen Orrey.
Yeah.
And he was talking about his wife, Claire Orrey, who he thought had been murdered at this point.
Yeah, and I think what also makes this case unique is that because he's referencing his son as being the offender, it's less likely that the offender will have just fled the scene.
Yeah.
Because it's the son, you don't know what state they're in. Whereas if it was a random attack, the chances are that they would have fled pretty imminently.
Yeah.
Whereas the police are probably heading in there thinking that your attacker might still
He's
be
still
on the
going to
scene.
be in there. So Stephen as well was heard on the 999 call saying to his son, so his son is called Robert, saying, Robert, calm down,
Yeah,
trying to
Robert,
calm his son
stop.
down.
Yeah.
He's trying to get through the bathroom door. He's trying to kill me. And it was just like, oh my God, if the police don't get there soon enough.
Yeah, it's awful,
Like,
isn't it?
you dread to think what
And
else could have happened.
He also says at one point to the dispatcher, he's like, he's still there, isn't he? Did you hear that bit? It was like at one point. I just think it must be awful. But again, even with his son, he was very calm. They weren't like having this blazing round. Because again, at first, obviously it's difficult because now you know how it all unfolds.
Yeah.
But at first I was thinking, well, I can't hear his son in the background.
Has it been a family argument?
But when it's a bit like, we're obviously already overcautious with all of them. It's like when we did the case where she'd faked being the victim.
Oh, and you hear the 999 call and stuff.
Yeah, when you hear the 999 call and you're trying to work it out. So at first, I did think like, oh, well, I can't hear anyone trying to beat the door down. Like, is that really what's happened?
Yeah.
Obviously.
And because he was so calm as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you never know. But again, these are all of the things that you've got to factor in because you don't know anything for certain at that stage.
Yeah.
But when the police did enter the property, they did then find Robert Orrey, who was the son. He was arrested in the back garden. He was only wearing a dressing gown.
Yeah.
So he was actually told to lie flat on the ground in the garden. They'd got a taser ready, but I don't believe that they actually used the taser because
No.
he did lay straight down.
I saw some of the footage and he didn't resist arrest or anything. But the officers then found Claire Orrey dead in the bedroom. She'd got multiple head injuries. And then obviously they found Stephen, who had also got multiple head injuries.
And he got then rushed to hospital.
He got taken to hospital and luckily he did survive.
Yeah. At this stage as well, when he's been arrested, Robert then says to the officers, tell my sister I had to do it.
Yeah.
The hard part is over. I had to do it. Now, this doesn't get referenced a lot, but I think that's a really significant quote. And we'll come back to why I think that in a little while.
Yeah, so with this, when he said that, you automatically think there's something more to this than just a cold-blooded murder.
Yes.
Don't you?
I thought maybe there's a history of abuse or something along those lines.
Yeah, and something's happened to the sister as well because
Yeah.
he almost said it as if the sister would understand.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
Yeah. I think what's important to note as well is the ages of these people. So I believe that Robert was in his early 30s at this stage. So he is obviously at his parents' home and they're probably late 60s, would you say?
Yeah,
Early
they
70s
probably
potentially.
looked 60s, didn't they?
So then the police are briefed. So you've obviously got a full team working on this. And in this case, you've got the detective sergeant in the case was Age Jones. You've got the chief investigating officer or detective was Matt Keeble. You've then got SIO Tony Gardner and then DC Alex Lane.
I think with this, it's a little bit different from, sort of the normal murder investigations where a manhunt is started straight away.
Yeah.
Because with this, you've already got the offender, they've already been arrested, they're already in custody. So this makes it a little bit easier for the police to start their investigation rather than having a manhunt.
Yeah, it's almost like you're always kind of working backwards, aren't you?
Yeah.
But in this case, it's almost like you've got all of the jigsaw pieces and now you've actually just got to put them together.
Yeah, because when you interview...
finding the pieces.
Yeah, when you interview the offender, you don't know what they're going to say. They could interview him, it could go no comment, it could tell them what happened.
Yeah.
So I feel like at this point, it's looking quite straightforward, as the next step would be just to interview Robert, wouldn't it?
Yeah. While that's going on, obviously they're now going to enter the scene as a crime scene because Claire Orrey, unfortunately, has now been found and declared deceased. At this point, they know who the offender is, but like we've just mentioned, they've got to work out what and how this has happened because they still haven't got any clear motive.
Yeah.
The father has obviously been rushed to hospital, so he can't give an indication of what has happened at this stage. So you are then working on the evidence. So a team went in to work on the house as the first port of call. And interestingly, I thought they went and analysed Claire's bedroom first off, didn't they?
Yeah, but there was also a lot of blood in other places, wasn't there, around? So I thought, would you work through it and not walk through everything else to go straight to the bedroom? But do you think that's because where the main, crime took place?
Yeah, and
or
I think
the main
because
attack?
you've still got a living victim, you probably want to know what has happened specifically and work out it that way, I guess. Also, I couldn't quite work out, was Claire's bedroom downstairs?
No, I got the feeling that Claire's bedroom was upstairs because the investigators started, so they did actually start in the rest of the house, but they tracked the blood back to work out where it started.
Yeah.
And when they were, I'm saying upstairs in the bedroom, the only reason I say that is because when I was watching the clip of another CSI come in, she comes upstairs and starts talking to them, doesn't she?
But I didn't know whether that was when they were analysing the bathroom.
Oh, I don't know.
Regardless, they, like you said, they take note of certain pieces of evidence in other places in the house, but then they go and focus on the bedroom. So they believed that the main attack, the first part of the attack, would have taken place in Claire's bedroom.
It was quite a horrific scene as well. There's a lot of blood
spatter.
When I saw the videos of the crime scene, I thought, God, the police and CSI just go in and do this every single day. And it's it did look horrific in there, didn't it?
Yeah. I think it's always kind of more difficult. When you watch things on television, obviously it's all very manufactured and it's all very set up, and everyone likes to quote Dexter to us. And whenever you watch Dexter, obviously there is the sticky back plastic everywhere. Seeing the blood spatter on that is a lot less.
Yeah.
You see, I would use the word jarring, but you tell me off. What's the word? Daunting almost. In reality, you've got this lovely floral wallpaper.
Yeah.
And I'd say older person's bedding.
Yeah.
And then it's covered in blood. Like there's blood pooling, there's blood spatter. And seeing it again, like the contrast of the two, makes it really difficult.
I did actually think that at the time. It just looked like a normal bedroom.
Yeah.
Like she'd got a mirror hung up and there was blood spatter on the mirror. And you just think, God, that's just a normal person's house. Regular person.
Yeah. So they Again, they're making a lot of assumptions, and I did notice that the CSI in this case, or the blood analyst, kept saying...
Like presumed. What was that word? Was it a word she was using?
Yeah, she kept saying, it would appear, or it may appear...
Or possibly.
It could possibly have been caused. But effectively what she was saying is that likely Claire was first attacked while she was in bed, potentially head on pillow, therefore asleep, and at some point she may have then tried to get away from the attacker by lifting her head, and that was because there was a separate spatter pattern that was then on one of the curtains.
It was a little bit higher up. So I thought with this one, if I put myself in that position and if someone's hit you while you're in bed, you know, maybe your first reaction is to jolt up and think, you know, what's happened.
Yeah.
And then obviously if there's another hit, that will then create a different blood pattern, won't it?
Yeah. So they did believe that the attack had first taken place in the bedroom. There's then blood elsewhere, so there's quite a lot of blood in the bathroom, and they do then find a bloody hammer on the bathroom side. They also then find mismatched gardening gloves that also have, or appear to be, which they were then confirmed to be covered in blood.
So with this one, you've got the suspect, you've got someone who survived, so you've potentially got a witness, and you've got the murder weapon.
Yeah.
It's like
quite a lot of
evidence already, isn't it?
Yeah. Then obviously a post-mortem is conducted, and that confirmed that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. They did say that there were potential or possible defence wounds to Claire's arms.
You do find, don't you, that they are normally on there because you'd put your arms up to maybe protect your face or your head, and that's how you get them on your forearms
or even
more than
like
anywhere.
Pushing someone away, you'd be using your hands, wouldn't you? But if there's anything that makes the whole ordeal slightly easier, it was that they did believe that Claire wouldn't have survived for very long at all after the first hit.
This was interesting how they found out this. Yeah. Because they looked at blood in the airways and they were able to estimate that she probably took a couple of breaths after being hit. So, you know, it, like you said, it was very quick. But, yeah, for them to know that there was 2 breaths from the amount of blood in the airways. Yeah. Like, I've not really come across that side of it before,
So, unfortunately, obviously, they're now looking into Claire's murder. But as you said, we've got quite a lot of evidence already. The one piece of evidence that we haven't looked at in more detail is obviously your witness.
Yeah.
So when he was able, they then did go back and then get an account as to what had happened. So Robert's father, Stephen, stated that he got in, I don't know what he did for work.
He said he'd been working a really long shift.
But got in about 1 o'clock in the morning. So would obviously expect that his wife and son would be in bed anyway.
Yep.
We now know that Robert was living at the family home. So again, he would have expected that both Robert and Claire would be asleep. Gets in at 1 a.m. and goes upstairs to bed.
So from what I could work out, he had a different a different bedroom, didn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe because he was getting in at 1 a.m. You wouldn't want someone disturbing you all the time, would you?
Or even I know a lot of couples where one of them snores, so the other one
sleeps separate,
in a different room. But he is then awoken at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he's not sure what it is that he hears, but he picks up his phone and takes that to the toilet. At that point, he then hears what he described as a crunching sound, and then hears his dog Ada make a noise that he just said he'd never heard of before or never heard her make before, but it sounded like a squealing noise. He then, this is 5 o'clock in the morning, he's got no idea what's going on, but then goes to see what's happening, gets to the bathroom doorway, and then is confronted by his son Robert. At that point, Robert then comes at him and swings with a hammer in his hand.
And you can imagine it's early in the morning anyway. You're probably still half asleep. You've heard a weird noise from the dog. Is all you think is you're going to go and check on it. Like, Stephen at this point is caught totally off guard.
Yeah, completely. And also, he's not heard Claire,
there's no screaming or help. Yeah.
So you wouldn't really, I don't think, necessarily know that anything was wrong.
Did something happen to the dog? Because there was no mention of it, was there, in anything?
They never confirmed, but I think from the sound of it, based off the noise that the dog made. Because to me, if a dog feels like one of its pack is in danger,
it'll growl and bark.
Growl.
Yeah, and they said that the dog was laid at the side of Claire in the bed.
Yeah.
So maybe...
Yeah, I think, unfortunately. So he is then confronted by his son and he gets hit on the head by a hammer. He then falls back into the hallway and is kind of slouched down in the hallway, at which point his son then is repeatedly hitting him with a hammer. You just can't imagine it, can you?
No.
And he's a grown man as well. We're talking about Robert is
in his probably in his prime, in his 30s, isn't he?
Yeah.
And it was really sad that...
And he wasn't a skinny bloke, was
no.
he? He was...
That I saw a quote from Stephen and it said, like, at that point, he knew that if he didn't do something or fight back or get out of this situation, then he was going to be killed.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gave him the sort of adrenaline or extra...
And our bodies are incredible, aren't they? Because I think with a lot of people, that is, you get this other kind of ability to do things you didn't think you were capable of.
He's already been hit 2 or 3 times to fight back and overpower a 31-year-old.
And to get up, even physically get up at that point. Yeah. So he managed to get up. He did also say that as he went to try and grab the hammer from his son, he managed to grab it, but because it was so covered in blood, it kept slipping. Which again, just the visual of that would just be horrific. Because yes, there'd be blood from him, but then you would also think that he's now potentially thinking, has that come from Claire?
My wife? Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's really difficult, isn't it? So he manages to get back into the bathroom, closes and locks the bathroom door, and then again, I just imagine he's slouched then, seated in the doorway of the bathroom, trying to prevent Robert from then getting in. But it's at this point that he says he fumbles around with his phone for a couple of minutes, manages to get the phone out to call 999, but he can still hear and probably feel Robert banging on the door, trying to bash the door down.
You could hear it in the background of the 999 call. You could hear a few bangs, and then he was like, Robert, calm down.
When he's talking to 999, it's silent and you can't hear anything, and he's very calm. And then he says, no, he's still trying to get in, and then you start to hear him banging, don't you? So you can hear towards the end that he's there.
So with this now, the police have got a lot of what they need, but they still need to prove if this was premeditated. Was it with intent? What's the motive? Why would someone kill the mother and try and kill the father? There's so many things and there's so many questions that the police have still got unanswered. And the mother and father actually had CCTV which covered the back garden.
So it was motion activated, wasn't it?
So it had come on when it obviously senses someone's there, and then it usually records until the person goes, doesn't it?
I thought also, from a technical point of view, what was really lucky is that, yes, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, but it was so bright, wasn't it?
Was,
It could have been the middle of the day when you watched the CCTV. Maybe they brightened it, I don't know. But it looked like it was just one of those really bright early mornings.
Because it was summer though, wasn't it? So you'd think, sometimes now I get up at 6 and it's broad daylight outside, and I think, God, I can't wait till winter so I can stay in bed a bit later and it not be bright outside.
But it did help in this case.
And it covered the garden, and it sort of covered the entrance to the house, didn't it?
So
from the garden.
You could get into the back of the house via the conservatory. And what became quite clear quite quickly was that Robert was often out in the back garden because he was a chain smoker. So they knew he was a smoker, and they could see him out in the back garden pacing around. Now, obviously, like Annie's just mentioned, they are trying to work out whether or not this was premeditated, what his state of mind was before the attack. And again, he's in this dressing gown, so it doesn't look like he's kind of ready to go anywhere or do anything. He's not up at 5 o'clock for a particular reason.
Yeah, he's literally up at 5 o'clock to smoke outside, isn't he?
Yeah, but he is pacing and he does seem a little agitated.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
This goes on from between 3 o'clock in the morning right the way up till 5 o'clock in the morning, which is obviously when the 999 call came in, so
And
right before the attack.
Sort of see him going like outside, and he'll smoke, and then he'll go back inside, then he'll pace up and down, then he'll smoke again.
Yeah.
And it's like always pacing backwards and forwards. But then at one point, he comes onto the screen, doesn't he? And he's got his gardening gloves on.
Yeah, so
he's still in his dressing gown.
Yeah, but it's these two mismatched gloves now that they've obviously then found in the house with covered in blood.
And now he's wearing them.
He's worn them.
Yeah.
And then holding a rounder's bat.
Yeah. So he's sort of, in a way, you think this has got to be some sort of premeditated, because you've put the gloves on,
yeah,
and you've got a weapon. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you doing with that at 5 a.m. in the morning, or 4 a.m., whatever time it was?
Yeah. It doesn't look like he's fearful in terms of he thinks there's someone that's about to intrude and he's picked it up for self-defense kind of thing. He's agitated but also relaxed. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's as if he's pondering or maybe even like psyching himself up for something rather than being in fear or in danger.
I thought it looked a little bit like he were talking to himself, having a conversation with himself, like
himself
in or out
almost.
or something. Yeah.
So the house obviously then still needs to be searched, or all parts of it need to be searched, including Robert's bedroom,
because he is a suspect and he lives at the house, so you can get like
that's a real
deeper
plus for the search teams, because ordinarily you then have to have a separate search team
and a separate crime scene
going to the suspect's address, but you've already got the suspect's address because it's the room next door.
So you can get a lot of background on the suspect already, can't you? And then on top of what you find in the search.
So there was an awful lot of, I would say, helpful and potential evidence in the bedroom. Yeah. There were quite a few almost like posters or pieces of artwork that were up on the walls, and it was quite thin, like chipboard or plasterboard. So they did say, like, just take note of whether or not he could have potentially put anything behind this chipboard.
Yeah.
And when they took the artwork down, they did notice, kind of the little stickers that you have that you put maybe on the front of envelopes, or if you work in an office, you might have put them on folders and things. He'd got quite a few of those on the walls that had different, like, quotes.
But underneath the posters, like behind the poster.
Yeah, so stuck onto the wall with then a poster on top.
So you'd lift the poster
you wouldn't be
up.
able to see it, but he would obviously know that they were there. And they weren't like, I know a few people that will have Post-it notes on the mirrors and things that are like...
reminder for something. Yeah.
Or like, if you do it today, you can do it tomorrow, that kind of thing. But they weren't. They were quite like obscure quotes.
Yeah.
Then there were a lot of notebooks with like scribbled drawings in, the odd thought. There were some almost like diaries and journals that had dates on them and times, but some were more artistic, I would say.
I thought these did give away a lot about himself, though, and his state of mind, sort of in general, because he writes about being detached from reality, that him himself is a predator. But then on the other hand, he writes about his mom and how selfless she is, and it's just like, it's two different...
It was as if he had two sides to himself, because at one point he also stated that he was a healer, and it was going to help heal mankind.
But then he references Satan
as being a predator. There was also a lot of different books that referenced Satan, that referenced kind of Hitler and Nazis and things like that. there was a reference of him having a psychotic break. There were also pieces of, what's the word? Like help sheets almost. So sometimes if people are struggling with mental health, they'll get given these help sheets and they might say like, break down how you're feeling, like list 3 emotions or something like that. Or it'll say, talk about how you're feeling in more detail. And there were a couple of these things where he'd kind of tried to do what it was asking and then gone off-piste with it.
Yeah.
But that would then obviously suggest that he has had issues with mental health in the past. They then found some NHS letters, which also then suggested that they believed he could be medicated for a mental health issue. But ultimately, they gave the impression that he was someone that struggled with paranoia, isolation, and certainly low self-esteem, but that also had a good relationship with his mum, saying that she was kind and selfless.
Yeah, and all these documents would be obviously gathered as evidence. They will be looked through. Someone will go over these sort of bit by bit.
Yeah.
But one thing that sort of I didn't really think about, but when the documents were being looked over, whoever was analysing it said, "Oh, I'm not used to analysing the paper stuff now. It's normally all digital."
Yeah.
But there was like pages and pages and pages of handwritten notes for them to go through.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that would have taken them quite a
because
while
they
to get through.
have to then scan it all in,
Yeah.
and then kind of analyse it digitally.
Yeah.
So even just scanning every single page in detail would be difficult.
Crazy.
There were also a couple of references to names of people that they weren't sure whether or not they were kind of characters that he'd created or names of real people. So obviously then they've got to investigate that.
They were trying to run them through the system, weren't they?
And
see like, are these
a couple
people
of almost like codes where he could have come up with like a reference himself. So there was a lot to sift through, and I can imagine that would have taken a hell of a lot of a time. But I would have quite liked that job. That was the bit where
Robert
was like,
came across like quite like an intelligent.
Yeah, did you notice
person.
that it referenced Maslow's hierarchy of needs
Yeah.
as well in one of them?
Yeah.
So he was a psychologist. So he obviously had quite a high level of knowledge about kind of psychology, but also then potentially history. And his family, obviously they interviewed different people within his family, and they did state that at around the age of 19, his behaviour did start to change, and he then did spark up an interest in conspiracy theories, as well as the afterlife and angels and demons and that kind of thing. By 2021, they saw a much quicker and more rapid decline in his mental health.
I wonder what was the thing to spark it in 2021, because obviously they knew of the mental health issues before. Andy was already getting help for those. But in June 2021, Robert was actually arrested. It was reported to the police for attempting to murder his mom with a baseball bat. But he ended up just crying and saying that he couldn't do it. But how similar are these two things?
Yeah, so that was like, as far as I know of, it was like 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And obviously he was living at home at the time, but he just came downstairs while Claire was sat in the living room with a baseball bat, went to swing it above Claire's head, and then effectively just broke down in tears and then was kind of in a heap on the floor. She then obviously wouldn't have known what to do, so rang 999, and the crisis team, the mental health team, then came out and he was sectioned. But now looking back at it, like we say, how similar the two events
because
are.
at that time when he got arrested in 2021 as well, he did say that he had planned to kill all the family.
Yes.
So even though he was sectioned and obviously he got help for it, he was only sectioned for 6 weeks before being released, and he was given an injection, so it's like an antipsychotic medication, and as far as I know, it's within like water or oil, and it goes into your muscle, and that's what makes it like release slowly over time. So instead of taking daily medication, you can take this one injection every so often, and it releases it over time, which is good for people who maybe miss the medication or forget to take it or don't want to take it. These injections would be quite
longer lasting.
Yeah, good for that. And he was on those for a year.
Yeah.
And his mental health seemed to improve while he was on these.
I thought it was quite interesting at that stage that he was, I say just is the wrong word, but he was diagnosed with psychosis at that stage. So they believed that it was due to psychosis that had led to the attack on his mother. He was then medicated, like you say, and then was provided with a support worker. So they would have been going through some form of therapy with him, and he had this support worker to work alongside. I do wonder whether this interest in the conspiracy theories and the afterlife and things could have been a potential escalation for his emotions. Yeah. I think for anyone susceptible to severe mental health episodes, I think the more that they find an attachment in something that is less real. Conspiracy theories ultimately are a conspiracy because they haven't been proven to be any form of fact. So I think the more they disconnect and become more established or more familiar with non-factual elements of life, that's easier for them to almost spiral. Yeah. But again, that's just my thoughts on it. We don't know that for certain. His family did state that he did then become increasingly depressed after that couple of years, because it's a big adjustment. Being diagnosed or of having had psychosis and being within a mental health unit or hospital for even 6 weeks is a huge thing to have to go through. It is, but for some reason I thought it would be longer. Yeah. You know, to say that you've just tried to kill your family. Yeah. I don't know, I was expecting like 6 months or something. Yeah, but
I
he
think
wasn't
6 weeks was
charged
quite
with anything, was he? I think they thought it was like it would have been grievous bodily harm or something. I don't think.
Yeah, I suppose attempted, isn't it? Yeah.
I know afterwards he said he had planned to kill them, but I don't think they kind of treated it as such. It was more just of a cry for help, I guess, at that point. Yeah. And it also depends how you respond in treatment to when they then deem that you're able to leave. Yeah. But he then became a recluse. So it sounds like he was able to hold a job down. Yeah. So he'd got a job and he was going to work, but other than going to work and coming home, that was it. I don't think he was showering. It sounds like he wasn't eating.
Just sitting in his bedroom when not doing anything.
Living with his mum and dad, and not a lot else. Which obviously then doesn't help, because if you've already got fascinations with things like the afterlife, you've got a lot more time to read, unfortunately, content that...
you've got loads of time on your hands, haven't you?
Good for you.
Yeah.
So at this point in our investigation, in the investigation of Claire's death, Robert is assessed and they deem him... basically unfit to be questioned. So the mental health team then declare him as being needing to be sectioned, and he's then placed on a 28-day hold.
So this allows them to have those 28 days to do a sort of thorough assessment on him. Yeah. And dig a little bit deeper, but then this sort of puts the police investigation on hold because they can't interview their suspect.
So they're doing obviously comprehensive psychiatric and psychological tests on him within the hospital, but ultimately they need to get him well. If they think he's very unwell, they need to work out what medication, and it's not as simple as just saying this medication is right for you. It's dosages, it's how you're responding, it's whether or not he'll communicate with staff, because if they don't really know the extent of what's going on with him mentally, they can't treat it. So that's a lengthy process in itself. But like you say, from the investigation point of view, and the lead detective did actually say, didn't he? He said, please don't be, to his team, he said, please don't be disheartened.
They were like, just go home, don't be disheartened.
Yeah, like the investigation we'll pick it up again. Continues. We're still going to get somewhere. Yeah. It's just difficult because it doesn't follow the normal or natural course of an investigation where you then go and arrest your culprit, you interview them and you work out why they've done it.
But there was still quite a few things to be getting on with in the investigation. So while Robert is having his assessment, the police actually look at messages between the family and Robert. They find that it's a strong family unit.
Sorry, just to say as well, these are via Claire and Stephen's mobile phones,
they didn't have Robert's phone at this time because he said he lost it a couple of days before the murder took place. But it was really sort of heartfelt messages, especially between Robert and Claire. So he was saying to his mom, you know, like, love you. And she was saying, I know it's bad at the moment, but this is the start of you finding yourself again. It just showed like how much she was actually there for her son. They were such a nice family.
Yeah, I cried at this point because I think it's so hard. And I think it was really clear that both Claire and Stephen just loved their son so much and wanted him to get help. And these text messages that they kind of reference are from when he was in the mental hospital in the first instance, when he was in the unit there. And she even messaged him. She went with him after he had potentially tried to attack her by hitting her over the head. She then went with him to make sure that he was safely kind of placed into the mental health ward. And when she got back home, she said, sorry, haven't had signal. I know it's really daunting now, but this is the first step to us getting our son back. And I just thought, God.
Yeah. And she was sort of asking for advice from like her friends as well, sort of confiding in people on these messages. And it just showed you how hard it was for the family.
And while he was in there in the first instance, it seemed that Claire was going daily, every other day, as often as she could, basically, to see her son. And there were a few photos that were actually shown. And you see him when he's probably not been in there for very long, but he was obviously doing quite well because it's a photo of him and his mum, and it's a selfie of him in like the garden of the unit.
I feel like the photos, you could really tell when he was doing well because the photos were massively different, weren't they?
Yeah, because then right before he was due to be released, they then had another photo and he'd had like a haircut.
Yeah.
He looked
brighter, different, didn't he, in general?
Yeah.
So like we said, when he was released from there, he had all the sort of support and all the tools that he needed. But eventually he started to go off track because he was not taking his medication and he actually started smoking weed. So he deteriorated. So he was all right for a while. And then it's when obviously drugs come into play and then he's off his medication. You don't know how these different drugs are going to react. You don't know what they're going to make you
and again,
like personally.
One of the side effects that you can get from something like cannabis is
psychosis,
paranoia and psychosis. And if you already have a mental health issue that triggers or, you know...
could be heightened,
then it's a really dangerous kind of thing to get involved with. Bear in mind he's still living at home as well. But he did seem to go downhill at that stage. But you do often find that with people that struggle with mental health, they almost want to self-medicate, you know, they want to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
And I did think it was really interesting as part of the documentary that I watched. One of the officers said, like, yes, for us, it doesn't make any logical sense to be doing illegal drugs when you know that you've got a condition that is going to be affected by that. But that's us as a person without mental health issues thinking logically.
Yeah.
If you're in that state and you maybe even believe, if you are paranoid, that the medication is harming you, you're not thinking logically. You're not in a position to think, you know, logically or like other people might in that situation.
And that's another thing that the police have got to prove, like him not taking his medication. Did he believe that medication was doing bad to him? You know, did he come off it for that reason, that he genuinely thought that it was doing something bad to him and that's why he started taking other drugs?
Yeah.
Like the police have got to work out the intent behind it, which is the hardest part, I think.
And it is really difficult for them because they're effectively questioning someone's mental health and you don't want to accuse someone of faking it.
Yeah.
But they have got to work out the level in which
But then they do see it.
Responsibility.
They do see it a lot of time as well, where people can play the system and like that's why they obviously get sent off and have a proper psychiatric evaluation.
Yeah.
And it's not just by one doctor, it's usually by two doctors,
Yeah, absolutely.
independent of each other, so that they can get like an accurate result, really, isn't it?
So they do then deem Robert as being fit for questioning. So it was actually DC Sue Jones that led the interview, because again, we've talked about it before, different people are qualified to or specialise in interviewing in different circumstances. And she basically said, look, let's prepare for a no comment interview, and he might not want to speak to us, but they did know that he had been making certain statements to people that were working on the ward where he'd been staying. So he may have wanted to talk. Ultimately, in terms of the objectives for the police and for their investigation, they wanted to discuss how premeditated, or whether it was premeditated, why he hadn't been taking his medication, and then again about these disclosures that he'd made to the medical staff within the hospital. He was quite nervous. They showed you a clip of him getting kind of briefed by the custody sergeant, and he didn't disclose any mental health illnesses at that point, didn't he? He didn't actually say, I've previously been diagnosed with psychosis. But he did say that he was feeling depressed.
Did he say he was depressed or
And
nervous
he said
or
he was
something?
nervous, yeah. But in the interview, he was quite reserved, but he seemed quite, I wouldn't say confident, but kind of
It was almost like
collected, would be the word I'd use.
he wanted to talk in this, and during the interview, basically is what he said is that he had voices in his head telling him to kill his mum and dad, but he had previously spoke to the experts about this, so I'm guessing this is when he was being assessed.
Yeah.
He'd then told people about this situation that he was having, and with the way that he was saying it, I do truly believe that he heard the voices in it. He was saying it so matter of fact, like it was almost a normal thing for you to be talking to someone or hear these voices in your head.
He said he believed it was a mercy killing, and that's when he then started referencing these two names or these two voices.
So he basically thought that someone was going to come and hurt his mum and dad, and they were going to torture them, and that it would be better if he killed them and they would be in a better place. So he believed he was doing it for the good, didn't he? Yeah. And he believed that was going to happen to them that night. So he needed to kill them there and then.
He also believed that these two voices at the time of the incident were angels. So he believed that they were angels talking to him and telling him that, again, this needed to be a mercy killing to put his parents out of their misery or what would be a really horrific death by killing them quickly.
And he even said as well the bit about the voice that had told him that his mom was a really powerful angel and they needed her in heaven. So that's why they had to kill her there and then.
He said that he believed that he was disconnected from reality. He said that he'd not slept or eaten for days. He did now say, like, now looking back at it, I know they weren't angels, but I categorically believed at the time that they were.
Because you remember, he's not had sleep, he's not eaten, he's taking recreational drugs, he's not on his medication. And he actually said, quote, I was crazy, I wasn't a human being, I was the mental illness itself. So it's almost like he didn't know at the time, but obviously now he's back medicated again. He knows like what's happened, sort of thing.
Yeah. He did confirm that he had put the gloves on and that he'd done that to get a better grip on the weapon. He did confirm that his mum was asleep at the time and that the dog Ada was also there. And
he did claim that he was trying to make it as quick as possible.
Yeah, because at one point they said, why did you hit them over the head? And he said, that's where the brain
is. Yeah.
So again, he did kind of recount what had happened. It was quite emotional, this. So it was difficult because on one hand you would almost expect that now he is more mentally well, that he might then recall it and get really upset.
Yeah, because now he knows what he's done.
Now he knows what he's done. But he wasn't. He was still quite disconnected. He obviously remembered what had happened because he said he thought he'd hit his dad maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And his dad had said 3 or 4 times, so that would align really. And he also said that he remembered, they said, why did you hit them multiple times? And he said, because I knew because of the blood that they were suffering and I didn't want them to suffer. But one of the officers said, did you at any time believe that it was Robert Orrey himself that intended to kill? And he said, no, it wasn't me at all. I was clinically insane. So it does seem like he's kind of at a level of logic, but sometimes when you are so mentally unwell, you do disconnect.
Yeah.
So that still makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What they found, and obviously they're having to work out level of intent, is that Robert had said that he'd lost his phone prior to the attack. They actually then looked at the database from the phone carrier, the phone provider, who had said that it'd actually been disconnected 4 days before the attack. So that could be anything from pulling the battery out, turning it off,
Destroying the phone.
You don't know. His family didn't believe that it was a coincidence that this had happened right before the attack, purely because he'd had that phone for years and years.
Yeah.
So
it was literally 4 days before.
So they thought it was strange. So they thought, right, okay. But they could look at some of the data, whatever they'd got, not from the phone itself, but from the phone provider. And they found that there were frequent calls to one number. So effectively, if you can't go one way, if you can't go via his phone, you've got to go another way. And the calls to this one specific number also aligned with 235 pages of text and calls to one specific person who was already known to the police, and they were a drug dealer. So the police thought, right, well, let's get their phone then. Let's do it that way. And then we'll be able to look at the texts in reverse. So that's exactly what they did. They then did a search on the known drug dealers' property, took their mobile phones, and upon analysing the text messages, found that it was clear Robert was using quite high levels of cocaine and cannabis on a regular basis.
He'd also asked for crystal meth and MDMA.
Yeah.
And all I thought in this is, wow, what a mix of drugs. Even just to take 2 of these together, but to be taking all of these. And what had happened is Robert in the interview had said, no, I've not taken any drugs for about 2 months before this happened. And from the text messages, it was literally like 9 days and he'd been asking for drugs.
Yeah.
So it sort of put him in a bit of a bad situation, didn't it? Because it was proven that he had been taking drugs, which then affected his medication or then made him come off his medication.
Yeah, because then again, it brings into question, right, okay, so is he choosing
Did he know? Yeah.
to not take the medication, but he is choosing to take drugs, which he does know has a negative effect on his mental health. So again, they're trying to work out level of choice and intent and mental ability or stability in order to make these decisions for himself. But again, when they asked him again whether or not he'd got any drugs in his system that he basically shouldn't have at the time of the attack, he then still said no. But
well, he said I shouldn't have,
yeah,
or something,
and
I was
then
like,
he did get quite what's the word? I wouldn't say
he said something about not
defensive, but he
believing
basically
in
said
the
he
drug
didn't
tests
trust
or something.
the science, because drugs can potentially live in the hair root for up to a year, I'm sure he said. But again, I think if you've been into conspiracy theories, you probably don't trust the system and all of that.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't take a drug test, basically, or wouldn't trust the drug test. What I thought was clever, but makes a lot of sense, is that when they were looking through all of these texts, obviously amounts of money had been referenced in terms of how much either the dealer was charging or how much he was owed. And they managed to work out that roughly Robert was spending around £100 on cocaine and £15 on weed per week. That is an awful lot of drugs recreationally for anyone.
I wonder how he afforded it and what he was, because he had a job, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's still a lot
That's
of money.
A lot of money, yeah. And again, even if you're not taking it all within the week, that's still a lot of drugs to then need a top up of the following.
Yeah.
And again, bear in mind, he's said that there shouldn't be any drugs in his system, but this was like, 9 days up until the attack. So that could or might give you the feeling that it could be more premeditated.
Yeah.
And especially with the disposing of the phone, was that because he knew that they would find that
They knew they would see them. Yeah. So with this, medical reports are going to be done. Like we said earlier, 2 independent doctors will assess and write their reports about Robert, and they both referenced him having schizophrenia, and they did say it's a lifelong condition. It's not something that's just going to disappear, and he is actually liable to suffer with further episodes in the future. He will never be fully well, but he can be managed with medication. So when people sort of go to get interviewed by the police, and then they say, right, I'm going to plead diminished responsibility or mental health. It's not as easy as you think. You have to be assessed by people.
Separate psych evaluations done by 2 separate psychiatrists. They're very comprehensive reports. They're not just asking a couple of questions.
You don't just go, I'm going to go with insanity, and that's it.
They're also talking to the people that have worked on the ward with him while he's been held for the 27 days. It is very comprehensive. So ultimately, they both stated that he had paranoid schizophrenia, hallucinations, and delusions. The relapse was possibly and probably in part due to the drug use, the illegal drug use, but it was not, and this is important, it was not drug-induced psychosis. So sometimes if people either take too much of an illegal substance at once or over a prolonged period of time, they can get drug-induced psychosis purely due to the amount of drugs they've taken. In this case, they're basically saying it might have triggered a heightened sense of this paranoid schizophrenia, but it wasn't caused by the drugs necessarily.
So this obviously still, you've got the doctor's reports, but this still has to go to court.
Sorry, one last thing. They did say that he clearly believed at the time of the attack that he wasn't harming his parents. They did say that they didn't believe for a second that he thought he was actually hurting them.
So this actually went to Stafford Crown Court, and Robert did plead guilty to attempted murder and manslaughter by reason of diminished responsibility. So he'd pled guilty to both the injuries to his father and his mother.
Initial charges were attempted murder and murder. But then obviously because of likely the psych evaluations and everything else,
the charges can change based on the results of an evaluation, can't they?
So guilty to manslaughter, which then meant that because of the diminished responsibility, he receives basically an indefinite hospital order. So they don't give him a sentence as such because they don't believe he's fit enough to be within the prison system, but you are still in a secure hospital that is treated effectively like a prison version of a mental health ward.
You can't just go out. You are
it's
you
a
are
mental health
stuck in
ward
there
within a hospital effectively.
And he can actually only be released with the permission from the Secretary of State. So it's not something that the doctors can just say, oh yeah, we think he's better now, we'll release him. Like it's a long process to, and there'd be a lot to prove in this situation. One thing I didn't find is if his sister, his dad and his wider family still talk to him,
support him. I think they do, and this is based on the statement that his sister made after he was kind of sentenced or charged. So Louise was his sister, and she stated, having lost my mother to this tragic crime and my brother from his actions, our family has been completely overturned. I truly believe that Robert should remain in hospital to receive the care he desperately needs. However, no sentence can ever compare to the life sentence of grief that we will experience. Again, because she's referencing a brother needing care
And help.
I think she
You think they
obviously
do, yeah.
understands that it is due to the mental illness and not his
Yeah, maybe.
actions kind of thing. So I would have thought that they would probably support him to an extent that they are able to do.
Yeah.
But obviously that doesn't take away, like she said, from the grief of losing their mother, and
Who also
and
was
her
there for
husband.
him and supported.
Yeah, so Claire was described as being strong and joyful and living for every moment with her family. She was very much a
Family
strong,
orientated.
family-orientated woman.
Oh.
But again, just goes to show you that not all cases are as cut and dry as a callous monster.
Yeah.
You know, with motive for money or murder. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just never.
There's different circumstances
You never know.
surrounding. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
surrounding
And
a
that's
victim.
why it's so important to get the investigation as kind of ironclad as you can.
Yeah.
So there you go. Hopefully another interesting one for you. We are going to cover the unsolved case that we referenced a couple of weeks ago. That one's just quite a big one, so we need to make sure
We
that
need
can
to
give it
plan
our
that
full-
and have a lot of time, don't we, to research that one.
But as always, if you do have any other cases or anything else that you wanted us to discuss,
Let us know.
please let us know. Other than that, we will see you next week. Take care.
Bye.